Very quick look at the WP drop-in. I think this is part of their 6500 series lineup. Single spring conversion for the air forks. This was in I think a 2021 or 2022 bike. Every one of these single spring conversions is a little bit different. I do like this one. I actually have the K-Tech version in my own bikes. The K-Tech uses a bottoming cone that's on the top, if I remember right, and a slightly different spring seat setup. I think the spring sits in the bottom on those. But this one uses a spring seat extension that sits against the bottom of the fork lug, so you don't need to do anything different down there. It just sits in the factory lug, and then has a bottom spacer on there, and then the shim to prevent wear. And then the top is just like any of the other KTM spring forks with a internal preload adjuster and a plastic spacer up there. The spring guide is actually the same as a lot of the older bikes used. Just I think it's a little bit shorter on the bottom, but the reason that recess is there is a lot of or really all of the open chamber WP forks have a bottoming cone that's right here and uses that as your bottoming device. And it's a little bit longer and has a piston on the end of it on those bikes. One thing I do like about this is this is nitrided, so a little bit lower friction there. I think the K-Tech one in my bike is untreated. It's just a straight steel piece. You can kind of see inside there you got a rebound top out spring. That is pretty standard stuff, nothing crazy there. Those holes are just to vent any oil that gets inside that chamber. And you do want oil inside that chamber because that is your bottoming cone on this setup. I actually kind of like how they did this. There's a real piston in there with an actual bushing, so again, reduced friction versus maybe what the K-Tech setup has. And then it's actually a two-stage, or almost three-stage, but you probably can't feel that, where the piston goes past the large hole, so it's free bleeding out those two larger holes. The piston passes those during compression, and once it's past those, all you have is that small hole that's bleeding out pressure. This is a lot like how an old damping rod fork would work. Fundamentally, this is a damping rod, and that happens about that far from the end of your cartridge travel. I don't know how that relates to fork travel, just sitting here, but it's probably 1.5 to 2 inches off the bottom. That's typically where WP and most stock forks do it. Then eventually you get past that smaller one and you really get a hydrolock bottoming stop there. So again, you're about 1 inch apart on those two holes, and then have just a little bit of emergency travel left just in case before you hit your mechanical end of travel. So good setup. I don't know what these retail for, but I do like this a little bit better than the K-Tech one, just because of how the bottoming cone works and because of the slightly higher end materials and the bushing on the piston, where the K-Tech one is just plain metals running on other plain metals. So that's a quick look at that.